What if I told you that everything you've learned about the creation of the universe, the emergence of life, and even the origin of the sun that illuminates our days is incomplete? What if I revealed that there is an ancient African narrative that tells a completely different story from the one you were taught in school? Today, you will discover a millennia-old secret that has been silenced, a truth that few know about the African titan who gave rise to the earth, the sun, and life itself. Prepare yourself, because what you are about to hear may completely transform your view of existence, the cosmos, and who we really are in this infinite universe. This is not just another mythological story lost in time. No, this is profound knowledge that entire civilizations have guarded as sacred, an understanding of creation that connects the spiritual to the physical, the divine to the earthly, the infinite to the finite. Have you ever stopped to think about why certain stories about the creation of the world are widely disseminated, while others remain hidden in the shadows? Why some cultures have their mythologies studied in universities around the world, while others are completely ignored? The truth is, there is an African titan whose story is so powerful, so profound, and so revealing that it challenges everything you believe you know about how it all began. And today, at this very moment, you are about to become part of a select group of people who know this ancient truth. It's no coincidence that you are here now. It's not luck, it's destiny, because the universe conspires so that those who are ready to receive true knowledge find their way to it. And you are ready. You know that feeling that there is something bigger, something deeper behind the conventional stories we are told? That intuition that perhaps there is a hidden truth waiting to be discovered? Well, your intuition is correct. The story you are about to learn today is not just about African mythology. It's not just about ancient beliefs. It's about the very structure of reality, about how the cosmos organized itself, about how primordial energy transformed into matter, into light, into life. It's about the creative principle that gave rise to absolutely everything that exists. Imagine for a moment that you could go back in time, not just a few years or decades, but to the very beginning of everything, to moment zero, to the instant when there was nothing but an infinite and silent void. Now, before we delve deep into this extraordinary journey, I need you to do something for me. Leave the word awakening in the comments if you are ready to learn this ancient truth. Yes, write awakening in the comments now, because I want to know how many people are truly willing to open their minds to this profound knowledge. And while you're at it, leave a like on this video, because the information you're about to receive is too precious to keep to yourself. When you like it, you're helping the algorithm show this content to more people who are also seeking true answers about creation, existence, and the purpose of life. And subscribe to the channel by activating the bell, because every day I bring exclusive content about ancestral knowledge, deep spirituality, and truths that have been hidden from humanity for centuries. Understanding this content is not just about acquiring information, it's about transformation. It's about realizing that there is a wisdom much older and deeper than what has been presented to us as the only truth. When you truly understand the origin of creation from this ancestral African perspective, something within you changes forever. You begin to see the world with different eyes. You begin to understand your own existence in a completely new way. That's why it's so important that you like this video, because it needs to reach as many people as possible. There are millions of souls out there who are hungry for this kind of knowledge, who feel that there is something more, something profound that conventional education never taught them. And you can be the instrument for this wisdom to reach them. So like this video now, subscribe to the channel, and let's embark on this journey of discovery and awakening together. Because what you will learn here is priceless. It cannot be bought in any university in the world. It is not in any mainstream book. This is wisdom that has been passed down orally through generations of African sages, of griots who dedicated their entire lives to preserving this sacred knowledge. Deep within the ancestral African worldview lies an extraordinary creation narrative most people have never heard of, a story that predates many of today's creation narratives by millennia and offers a radically different perspective on how everything came into being. We are talking about traditions preserved orally for thousands of years, passed down through generations by the griots, the sacred storytellers of Africa. those who had the divine responsibility of keeping alive the collective memory of their people. Imagine entire civilizations that did not possess writing in the conventional sense, but which developed systems of knowledge transmission so sophisticated that they managed to preserve complex information about astronomy, philosophy, spirituality, and cosmology solely through the spoken word, through rituals, through sacred songs and dances. These systems of knowledge were not primitive, as many would have you believe. On the contrary, they were extremely advanced and contained profound understandings of the nature of reality that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. The African Titan we're going to talk about today isn't an isolated figure in some obscure mythology. No, it's central to diverse spiritual traditions that span the entire African continent, from north to south, from east to west. We're talking about Nanabuluku in some traditions, Mawulisa in others, creator deities representing the primordial principle that existed even before time, even before space, even before the concept of existence as we know it. But what makes this narrative particularly fascinating is that it doesn't describe creation as a singular event performed by an external entity, but rather as a self-organizing process of the cosmos itself, as a cosmic dance of energy unfolding into matter, into consciousness, into life. This perspective is surprisingly aligned with concepts of modern quantum physics, with theories about the self-organizing nature of the universe, with the idea that consciousness may be a fundamental property of reality and not just a byproduct of biological evolution. When you begin to study these ancestral African traditions in depth, you realize they contain impressive astronomical knowledge. The Dogon people of Mali, for example, had detailed knowledge of Sirius B, a white dwarf star orbiting Sirius A, long before European astronomers discovered it with powerful telescopes in the 20th century. How is this possible? How could a civilization without advanced astronomical observation technology know about the existence of a star invisible to the naked eye? This is just one of the many intriguing questions that arise when we begin to seriously investigate the astronomical and cosmological knowledge of ancient African civilizations. And this leads us to question, what else did they know? What other profound knowledge about the structure of the cosmos, about the nature of reality, about the origin of life was preserved in these oral traditions? The creator Titan in the African worldview is generally described as an entity that contains within itself both the masculine and feminine principles, both the active and receptive forces, both heaven and earth. This is a profoundly sophisticated understanding of the nature of divinity and creation, which transcends simplistic duality and recognizes that the creator principle must contain within itself all opposites, all polarities, all possibilities. In many traditions, this primordial Titan does not create the universe from nothing, but rather unfolds itself, fragments itself, multiplies itself into countless forms and manifestations. It is as if the cosmos itself were the body of this Titan, as if each star, each planet, each living being were a cell in this infinite cosmic organism. This holistic and integrated view of reality stands in stark contrast to the mechanistic view that has dominated Western thought for centuries. The idea that the universe is like a giant, inert machine, without consciousness, without purpose, without meaning. Ancestral. African traditions have always known that the universe is alive, that it is conscious, that every particle of existence is imbued with spirit, with vital force, with axe, as some traditions say. And when you begin to live with this awareness, when you realize that you are not separate from the cosmos but are an integral part of it, your life transforms in profound and unexpected ways. You begin to feel an intimate connection with all things. You realize that your actions reverberate throughout the entire web of existence. You understand that caring for the earth, honoring ancestors, and living in harmony with natural cycles are not just beautiful cultural practices, but existential necessities. Now comes the part that will truly open your mind and completely change your perception of the origin of everything that exists. The African Titan who gave rise to the cosmos is not just a distant and abstract mythological figure, but represents a fundamental principle present in every moment of the universe's continuous creation. In the Yoruba traditions of West Africa, there is the concept of Olodumare, the supreme creator who is neither male nor female, who existed before time and space, who is the source of all vital force, of all axe, life force, that permeates existence. Olodumare did not create the universe in 7 days and then rest. No, creation is a continuous, eternal process that happens every instant. Every breath you take now is an act of creation. Every beat of your heart is the pulse of the cosmos itself manifesting through you. This is not poetry, not empty metaphor. This is a literal and profound understanding of how reality works according to these ancient traditions. And the most impressive thing is that modern science is reaching similar conclusions through completely different paths. Quantum physics tells us that the observer affects the observed, that consciousness plays a fundamental role in the manifestation of physical reality. Ancient African traditions already knew this thousands of years ago. They taught that we are co-creators of reality, that our consciousness is not a mere passive spectator, but an active participant in the unfolding of the cosmos. According to these traditions, the primordial Titan emanated from itself a series of lesser forces or divinities, each responsible for different aspects of creation. In the Yoruba tradition, these are the Orishas, divine beings who are not separate gods in the conventional polytheistic sense, but rather different manifestations of the same single creative principle. Each Orisha governs specific elements of nature and aspects of human experience. Shango is the lord of fire and justice. Yemanja is the mother of the waters and motherhood. Oxosi is the hunter who dominates the forests. Ogun is the blacksmith who works metals and opens paths. But all of them are emanations of Olodumare, extensions of the original creator Titan. This is an extremely sophisticated theology that resolves the apparent paradox between monotheism and polytheism, showing how the one can manifest in the many without losing its essential unity. And when you understand this deeply, you realize that this is not just an abstract theological question, but a practical truth about how divine energy organizes and manifests itself in different frequencies and forms. According to these ancestral narratives, the creation of the earth was a deliberate and complex process. Olodumare sent the Orisha Obatala to create solid earth upon the primordial waters. Obatala descended from Orun, the spiritual plane, carrying a gourd containing sand, a five-toed hen, and a chameleon. When he arrived upon the infinite waters, he poured the sand, and the hen scattered it with its feet, thus creating solid land. The chameleon was the first to test whether the earth was solid enough to sustain life. This story, which may seem fantastic at first glance, actually contains profound geological knowledge when interpreted symbolically. The sand represents the minerals and elements that form the earth's crust. The hen scattering the sand represents the geological forces that shape the planet. The chameleon testing its solidity represents the life that emerges to inhabit the new world. All of this was encoded in a narrative that could be easily memorized and transmitted orally through generations. But the creation of the earth was only the beginning. The sun, that bright star that illuminates our days and makes all life on this planet possible, also has its origin connected to the creator Titan in African traditions. In some narratives, the sun was created to bring light and heat to the newly formed earth, to enable the growth of plants, to regulate the cycles of time, to mark the seasons. The sun is not seen as a mere ball of gas burning in space, but as a manifestation of divine energy, an eye of the Creator himself observing his creation, a cosmic heart pumping light and life throughout the solar system. The spiritual traditions of different African peoples developed surprisingly complex understandings of the structure of the cosmos, long before the development of modern astronomy. The ancient Egyptians, for example, possessed extraordinary astronomical knowledge reflected in the mathematical precision and celestial alignment of the pyramids. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned with almost perfect precision to the cardinal points. Its axes point to specific constellations, and its structure incorporates fundamental mathematical proportions such as pi and the golden ratio. How did builders more than 4,500 years ago achieve such precision without the instruments we consider essential today? This question troubles many conventional historians and archaeologists because it challenges the linear narrative of progress we have been taught. The uncomfortable truth is that ancient civilizations possessed knowledge that we consider advanced even today. And this knowledge did not arise from nothing. It was inherited from even older traditions, from a primordial wisdom dating back to the dawn of human presence on this planet. In the cosmology of ancient Egypt, there is the figure of Atum, also known as Atum-Ra, the primordial creator god who existed before creation. Atum is described as having emerged from the primordial hill that arose from the chaotic waters of Nun. the primordial ocean. Through an act of self-generation, Adam created himself and then, through different processes described in various versions of the myth, generated the first gods, who in turn created other aspects of reality. In some versions, Adam creates through masturbation, a powerful symbolism representing the self-sufficient principle of creation, the idea that the divine needs nothing external to itself to generate existence. In other versions, he creates through the word, speaking things into existence, a concept that also appears in other religious traditions. This parallel between different mythologies is no coincidence. It suggests an underlying common wisdom, a shared understanding of the nature of reality that was expressed through different cultural languages and symbols. What is absolutely fascinating is how these ancient narratives contain insights that modern science is only beginning to comprehend. Contemporary physics tells us that at the beginning of the universe, there was a singularity, a point of infinite density and energy from which the entire cosmos emerged in the event we call the Big Bang. This is not a concept so different from the primordial waters of none or the infinite void from which the African Titan self-generated. Both narratives describe a primordial state of pure potentiality that somehow unfolds into all the complexity and diversity we see in the universe. The difference is that African spiritual traditions have always known that this process is not merely mechanical, but intentional, conscious, purposeful. The universe is not a random accident, but a deliberate manifestation of divine consciousness. And you, yes you who are watching now, are part of this divine manifestation. You are not a cosmic accident, not a random arrangement of meaningless atoms. You are the cosmos itself becoming conscious of itself. You are the creator Titan experiencing existence through an individualized form. When you truly absorb this truth, when it penetrates not only your intellect but your heart and soul, your entire life changes. You can no longer live as if you were insignificant, as if your choices didn't matter, as if you were separate from the sacred web of existence. Now we come to one of the most surprising revelations about the African Titan who gave rise to creation. The concept that creation was not a single event in the distant past, but is a continuous process happening at this very moment. In African spiritual traditions, especially in the cosmologies of sub-Saharan Africa, there is a profound understanding that time is not linear as the West has taught us to think. Time is cyclical, spiraling, multidimensional. Past, present, and future are not separate compartments, but intertwined aspects of a single eternal reality. The ancestors are not dead and buried in some inaccessible past. They are alive and present, actively influencing the world of the living, offering guidance, protection, and wisdom to those who know how to connect with them. The Creator Titan is not a distant deity who created the world billions of years ago and then stepped away, leaving everything to run automatically. No, the divine is intimately involved in every moment of existence, sustaining reality with its continuous presence. If the Creator Titan were to withdraw its attention for a single instant, all of creation would cease to exist instantly. This is the concept of divine immanence, the idea that God is not in some distant heaven, but here, now, in everything and through everything. Breathing through your lungs, beating through your heart, thinking through your mind. In the Akan traditions of West Africa, there is the concept of Nyame, the supreme creator who is simultaneously transcendent and immanent, beyond all comprehension, but also present in every atom of creation. The Akan have a profound proverb that says, "If you want to speak to God, speak to the wind." The wind, which you cannot see but can feel, which is everywhere but cannot be captured, is a perfect metaphor for the nature of the divine. And just as the wind moves the leaves of the trees without the leaves being able to see the wind, the divine spirit moves all things without being seen by ordinary perception. But those who develop spiritual sensitivity, those who cultivate awareness through contemplative practices, rituals, and connection with nature, these can perceive the presence of the divine in everything. They can feel the pulse of the Creator Titan beating through all of existence. And this doesn't require blind faith. It doesn't require you to believe in any specific doctrine. This is a direct experience available to anyone willing to open their perception to deeper dimensions of reality. African spiritual practices have always emphasized direct experience over dogmatic belief. You don't need to believe that ancestors are present. You can learn to perceive them, to feel their presence, to receive their guidance. You don't need to believe that there is a universal life force permeating all things. You can learn to feel that energy, to work with it, to direct it through your intention and will. This is what differentiates African spiritual traditions from many institutionalized religions, the emphasis on practical experience over abstract theory. And when we look at the question of the origin of life through this lens, we arrive at profound insights. Life is not seen as having arisen accidentally through random chemical reactions in some primordial pool billions of years ago. Life is seen as the natural expression of creation itself, as a fundamental property of the cosmos, not an improbable accident. The universe is not dead, with life miraculously arising on a few rare planets. The universe is alive in its entirety, and what we call biological life is only one of the many forms that universal life can take. Here's something that will absolutely shock you when you truly understand the implications. Why has this ancestral African knowledge about creation, about the cosmos, about the nature of reality been systematically suppressed and ignored by Western academia? Why, when you go to school, do you learn about Greek and Roman mythology in detail, but practically nothing about the rich spiritual and cosmological traditions of Africa? This is not an accidental omission, my friend. It is the result of centuries of colonialism, of institutionalized racism, of a deliberate agenda to erase African history and wisdom. During the colonial era, Europeans not only stole Africa's natural resources, not only enslaved millions of Africans, but also systematically attempted to destroy African cultures, languages, spiritual traditions, and knowledge systems. Christian missionaries called African religions primitive paganism, demon worship, ignorant superstition. They burned sacred objects, destroyed temples, prohibited rituals, and severely punished those who tried to keep their ancestral traditions alive. But why? Why was there so much fear and hostility towards African spiritual traditions? The answer is disturbing, because these traditions contained knowledge that threatened the established power. They taught that each person has a direct connection to the divine, that you don't need institutional intermediaries to access spiritual wisdom, that divinity is present in nature and not confined to religious buildings. They taught that men and women are equally capable of spiritual leadership, that sexuality is sacred and natural, that the body is not a sinful prison of the soul, but a divine temple. These teachings were revolutionary, dangerous to power structures based on hierarchy, control, and oppression. So these traditions had to be suppressed, discredited, erased from collective memory. But here's the wonderful thing. They failed. Despite centuries of persecution, African spiritual traditions survived. They adapted, transformed, and found new paths. In the Americas, where enslaved Africans were forced to convert to Christianity, they created syncretic religions such as Candomblé, Umbanda, Santeria, and Voodoo, which preserved the Orishas and other African deities under the guise of Catholic saints. This was a brilliant act of spiritual resistance, a way to keep the flame of ancestral wisdom alive even under the most brutal conditions of oppression. And today, there is a powerful resurgence of interest in these traditions. People of all ethnicities and backgrounds are rediscovering the depth and relevance of African spiritualities. They are realizing that these systems of knowledge offer answers to questions that modernity cannot solve. How to live in harmony with nature, how to honor our ancestors and maintain a connection with our roots, how to find meaning and purpose in an increasingly fragmented and alienating world. African spiritual traditions offer practical paths to address these existential questions. Comment below ancestry if you are beginning to understand the magnitude of what has been hidden from you. Write ancestry in the comments to show that you are awakening to this profound truth. And share this video with someone who needs to hear this information because it is urgent, it is important, it can literally change someone's life. There are millions of people out there seeking authentic spiritual answers, tired of institutionalized religions that don't speak to their soul, feeling an existential void that nothing seems to fill. For these people, discovering African spiritual traditions can be like finding water after years in the desert. It can be the key that finally unlocks their spiritual potential, connecting them with something greater than themselves, giving profound meaning to their lives. So comment ancestry now and let's continue this journey of discovery together. What makes African cosmologies particularly revolutionary is their understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. In modern Western thought, especially since the Enlightenment, an atomistic worldview has developed where everything is seen as separate and independent. Individuals are seen as isolated entities competing for scarce resources. Nature is viewed as a collection of inanimate objects to be exploited and dominated. Body and mind are seen as separate entities. The spiritual and the material are considered completely distinct domains. This fragmentation permeates all of modern civilization and is at the root of countless problems: environmental destruction, social alienation, mental health crises, loss of meaning and purpose. African cosmologies offer a radical alternative: the vision that everything is connected, that we are all part of a living web of relationships that extends through time and space. In the Bantu traditions of Central and Southern Africa, there is the concept of Ubuntu, usually translated as "I am because we are." This is not just a pretty phrase, it is a profound philosophy about the nature of existence. You do not exist as an isolated individual. You exist through your relationships with other human beings, with your ancestors, with the community, with nature, with the divine. Your identity is relational, not individual. Your humanity is realized through the humanity of others. When you harm another, you harm yourself. When you uplift another, you uplift yourself. This understanding could completely transform our societies if it were truly embodied. Imagine an economy based on Ubuntu instead of selfish competition. Imagine public policies guided by the principle that the well-being of each person is intrinsically linked to the well-being of all. Imagine interpersonal relationships where you truly see the other as part of yourself. This is not an impossible utopian dream. This is how many traditional African societies actually functioned before colonization destroyed their ways of life. And examples of these principles in action can still be found in communities that have kept their traditions alive. The connection between the creator titan and the origin of life takes on an even more fascinating dimension when we examine specific spiritual practices preserved through generations. In many African traditions, there are complex initiation rituals that guide young people through a symbolic death and rebirth, connecting them directly with the primordial forces of creation. These rituals are not mere cultural ceremonies. They are sophisticated spiritual technologies designed to transform consciousness, to open doors of perception that normally remain closed, to establish a living connection between the initiate and the spiritual world. During these initiatory processes, which can last weeks or even months, participants are isolated from mainstream society, subjected to physical and psychological trials, taught secret knowledge about the nature of reality, and finally reintegrated into the community with a new status and understanding. Western anthropologists often interpret these rituals through reductionist lenses, seeing them only as mechanisms of social cohesion or psychological rites of passage. But this interpretation completely misses the point. These rituals are understood by practitioners as creating real changes in the spiritual world, not just in the individual's psyche. They open channels of communication with ancestors, establish relationships with nature spirits and deities, and confer real spiritual powers that can be used for healing, protection, and guidance. You may be skeptical of these claims, and that's understandable if you were raised in a materialistic worldview that denies the existence of any reality beyond the physical. But consider this: cultures around the world, separated by vast geographical distances and time periods, have developed remarkably similar practices involving altered states of consciousness, communication with spiritual entities, and the use of sacred plants to access non-ordinary dimensions of reality. Is this coincidence? Or does it suggest that these practices are in fact accessing something real, something that transcends particular culture and touches on universal aspects of existence? Modern science is beginning to investigate these questions through studies of altered states of consciousness, psychedelic experiences, and contemplative practices. And the results are fascinating. Research shows that mystical experiences induced by psychedelics or deep meditation have lasting therapeutic effects, can resolve deep psychological traumas, and can generate genuine insights into the nature of consciousness and reality. These findings are even forcing materialistic scientists to reconsider their assumptions about the nature of mind and consciousness. Delving even deeper into the spiritual and philosophical implications of African cosmologies, we find concepts that fundamentally challenge Western categories of thought. In the Dogon traditions of Mali, there exists an extraordinarily complex cosmology that describes the universe as emerging from a primordial cosmic egg that contained all possibilities of existence. Within this egg was Amma, the supreme creator, who eventually broke the egg and created the universe through a series of emanations and transformations. The Dogon described these emanations in intricate symbolic detail involving twin pairs, spirals, sacred numbers, and astronomical correspondences. What makes this particularly intriguing is that this cosmology has apparently been preserved unchanged for centuries, long before any significant contact with modern scientific concepts, and yet it contains remarkable parallels with contemporary cosmological theories. The idea of a primordial cosmic egg is not so different from the concept of the initial singularity in the Big Bang. The emphasis on pairs and duality resonates with principles of quantum physics regarding particles and antiparticles. The use of spirals as fundamental cosmological symbols aligns with the spiral structure of galaxies and with fractal patterns found throughout nature. These parallels raise profound questions about the nature of knowledge and revelation. How did ancient societies without scientific instruments arrive at insights that modern science is only now confirming? There are three main possibilities. First, pure coincidence. Second, these societies had methods of investigating reality that we do not recognize as valid, but that somehow worked. Third, they received this knowledge from some external source, either through contact with more advanced civilizations or through direct revelation from non-human intelligences. Each of these possibilities has profound implications. If it is coincidence, it is an extraordinarily improbable coincidence repeated across multiple cultures. If they had valid methods of knowledge that we do not recognize, we urgently need to study and perhaps reintegrate those methods. If there was some external source of knowledge, this opens up even deeper questions about the history of humanity and our relationship with the cosmos. The Dogon also speak of beings called Nomo, described as amphibians who came from the stars to teach humanity. These beings brought knowledge about agriculture, metallurgy, astronomy, and social organization. Similar stories of civilizing beings who came from elsewhere to teach humanity appear in cultures around the world. In ancient Egypt there was Thoth, in Mesopotamia there was Oannes, in South America there were Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl. Does this suggest some real historical event of contact? Or are these symbolic figures representing the awakening of human consciousness, the transition from hunter-gatherer societies to complex agricultural civilizations? We don't have definitive answers, but asking these questions opens our minds to possibilities that conventional thinking prematurely dismisses. Leave the word cosmos in the comments if this revelation about the astronomical wisdom of ancestral African peoples is expanding your consciousness. Write cosmos in the comments and show that you are recognizing the depth of this ancient knowledge. When you comment, you not only interact with the content, you affirm to yourself that you are paying attention, that you are absorbing these truths, that you are committing to your own journey of spiritual awakening. And share this video because there are people in your life who desperately need this information. Perhaps it's that friend who is going through a spiritual crisis, that cousin who is questioning everything she has been taught, that colleague who feels there is more to life than the materialistic narrative offers. When you share this knowledge, you become part of a chain of transmission that goes back thousands of years. You become a link in the ancestral chain that preserves and propagates vital wisdom. So comment Cosmos now, and let's continue exploring these truths together. The relationship between the African creator titan and the emergence of life is not just a matter of temporal origin, but of continuous sustenance. In many African philosophies, there is the concept that vital force, the energy that animates all living beings, flows constantly from the divine through various levels of existence until it reaches the material world. This vital force is known by different names in different traditions. Akse in the Yoruba tradition, Ntu in Bantu philosophies, Sekhem in ancient Egypt. But the essential concept is similar. There is a fundamental spiritual energy that permeates all creation and is the true source of life. When this energy flows freely through a being, that being is healthy, vibrant, creative, and connected. When the flow is blocked or diminished, illness, depression, alienation, and eventual death arise. Traditional African spiritual practices are largely about maintaining this healthy flow of vital force. Rituals, offerings, dances, chants, the use of medicinal plants, and other elements are all understood as ways to harmonize with cosmic forces and allow divine energy to flow freely. This is not primitive superstition. It is a sophisticated form of energy medicine that modern science is beginning to validate through studies on the human bioelectric field, on the effects of intention and consciousness on physical health, and on the effectiveness of practices such as acupuncture that work with similar concepts of vital energy flow. Now let's explore something that will connect all of this directly to your life, your daily struggles, your dreams and aspirations. When you truly understand that you are a manifestation of the creative Titan, that the same force that brought the universe into existence is flowing through you at this very moment, it radically changes how you live. You are no longer a powerless victim of circumstances, no longer an insignificant pawn in an indifferent cosmos. You are a co-creator of reality, endowed with genuine power to shape your experience and influence the world around you. This is not just an empty motivational statement. It is a profound spiritual truth recognized by ancestral African traditions. In the practices of different African peoples, we find specific techniques for working with this inherent creativity. The use of power words, chants, and incantations is not seen as mere superstition, but as a way to direct creative energy through focused intention. When a priest or priestess speaks ritual words, they are not just making random sounds. They are shaping reality through sound vibration imbued with conscious intention. Modern physics tells us that everything is vibration, that matter is condensed energy oscillating at specific frequencies. African spiritual traditions have always known that sound is a primordial creative power, that through sound you can influence the structure of reality. In ancient Egypt, it was believed that hieroglyphs were not just symbols to represent sounds or concepts, but were forms that had inherent power. Writing the name of something was to participate in its continuous creation, to invoke its presence, to establish a magical connection with it. That is why the names of the pharaohs were carefully protected and why defeated enemies had their names erased from monuments, not only to be forgotten, but to diminish their spiritual power. This understanding of the creative power of words and symbols is present in many African traditions. The names given to children are not chosen casually, but are chosen to invoke specific qualities, to connect the child with particular ancestors, to establish their destiny and purpose. Your name is not just a convenient label. It is a definition of who you are at the deepest level. It is a mantra that resonates throughout your life. When you understand this, you realize that every word you speak, every thought you think, every action you take is literally creating your reality. You are not passively experiencing a pre-existing reality. You are actively generating your experience through your conscious and unconscious choices. This places tremendous responsibility upon you, but it also grants you tremendous power. If your life is not as you want it to be, you have the power to change it. Not through superficial positive thinking, but through deep spiritual work of realignment with the creative forces of the cosmos, clearing inherited negative patterns, and consciously cultivating the virtues and qualities you wish to manifest. African spiritual traditions offer practical tools for this work of personal transformation. These are not merely abstract theories, but practices tested for thousands of years and proven by countless generations. Let's now connect all of this to the urgent question of how to live in this chaotic modern world while maintaining a connection to these ancestral truths. We live in an age of unprecedented fragmentation. Most people are completely disconnected from their cultural roots, their spiritual traditions, the natural cycles of the earth. We spend our lives staring at screens, working in jobs that don't fulfill us, consuming empty entertainment that doesn't nourish our souls. We feel a persistent anxiety, a void that we try to fill with shopping, food, relationships, drugs, anything to distract us from the existential pain that gnaws at us. But this void cannot be filled with external things because it is a spiritual void. It is the absence of connection to something greater than ourselves. It is the lack of profound meaning and purpose. African spiritual traditions offer a path to fill this void, to reconnect with the sacred, to find your place in the great web of existence. But this requires more than intellectual knowledge. It requires practice. It requires commitment. It requires real changes in how you live your life. First, you need to establish a regular practice of connecting with the sacred. This can take many forms, depending on your particular situation and which traditions resonate with you. It can be as simple as creating an altar in your home where you place meaningful objects, offer water or food to the ancestors, and spend a few minutes each day in contemplation or prayer. It can involve learning traditional chants and dances that invoke different Orishas or deities. It can mean spending regular time in nature, recognizing the presence of the divine in trees, rivers, mountains, and animals. It can include working with sacred plants under proper guidance. The specific is less important than consistency and sincerity. Second, you need to study. Read books on African spiritual traditions, not just simplified summaries, but profound texts written by serious practitioners and scholars. Learn about the history of Africa, about the great civilizations that flourished there long before European colonization. Learn about the sophisticated philosophical systems developed by African thinkers. Reclaim the knowledge that has been stolen from you through centuries of racist propaganda and cultural erasure. Third, seek community. Find other people who are on this journey of reconnecting with ancestral African wisdom. This could be through Candomblé or Umbanda temples if you are in Brazil, through Ifa or Santeria communities elsewhere, or through study and practice groups focused on African spirituality. You cannot make this journey alone. You need the support, guidance, and responsibility that comes from being part of a vibrant spiritual community. I want you to leave a comment telling me what the most impactful revelation has been for you so far in this video. Don't just write one word. Share a real thought, a genuine reflection on how this information is affecting you. When you articulate what you're learning, you deepen your own understanding and also contribute to a collective conversation that benefits everyone watching. And if this video is resonating with you, if you feel you finally found information that speaks to your soul in a way that nothing else has, then you need to subscribe to this channel now. Because I'm committed to bringing you regular content that explores these ancestral wisdom traditions, that questions dominant narratives, that offers practical paths to spiritual transformation. Click the subscribe button, activate the bell to be notified when new videos are released, and join this community of seekers who are awakening to deeper truths. Now, something crucial that needs to be said. Reconnecting with African spiritual traditions when you didn't grow up within those traditions requires humility and respect. You can't simply take elements that seem interesting and use them out of context. You cannot treat these sacred practices as spiritual consumer goods. Cultural appropriation is a real and valid concern, especially considering the history of how these traditions have been stolen, distorted, and commercialized. So, how do you navigate this? First, approach with reverence, not arrogance. Recognize that you are entering sacred territories that have been preserved at great cost by people who have suffered tremendously to keep these traditions alive. Second, seek out authentic teachers and mentors who are rooted in the traditions you want to learn. Don't trust self-proclaimed gurus who promise quick initiations and instant spiritual power. Find people who have been properly trained within legitimate lineages and who live the principles they teach. Third, be willing to do the work. Real spiritual transformation doesn't happen overnight. It requires discipline, consistent practice, confronting your psychological shadows, and changing ingrained patterns of thought and behavior. There are no shortcuts, no microwave spirituality where you just add water and you're enlightened. Fourth, honor the ancestors and communities that preserve these traditions. This may mean making regular offerings, financially supporting temples and teachers, working for social and racial justice, and educating others about true African history. When you receive the benefits of these spiritual traditions, you also assume responsibilities. Let me now share some concrete stories of transformation that demonstrate the real power of these traditions when practiced with sincerity. I know a woman who struggled with severe depression for years, tried antidepressants, therapy, all conventional approaches without much success. When she began working with an experienced Orisha, performing ibos, offerings to her Orishas, receiving spiritual guidance, her life began to change profoundly. It wasn't instant magic. It was a gradual healing process that involved confronting ancestral traumas, clearing accumulated negative energies, establishing healthy relationships with spiritual forces that protected and guided her. Today she is medication-free, lives with purpose and joy, and has become a practitioner herself who helps others. I know a man who was trapped in cycles of self-sabotage, repeatedly destroying relationships and opportunities without understanding why. Through working with the Ifa tradition, consulting the oracle, performing prescribed rituals, undergoing appropriate initiations, he discovered karmic patterns inherited from ancestors that had never been resolved. By working to clear these patterns through specific spiritual practices, he was able to break the cycles and create a completely new life. Stories like these are not rare. They are common among those who seriously engage with these traditions. And this is not placebo. It is not self-delusion. When you work with real spiritual forces through methods tested for millennia, real results happen. Modern science is beginning to have the tools to study these issues properly. Research on the effectiveness of traditional spiritual practices shows impressive results. Studies on ritual-induced altered states of consciousness show measurable changes in brain activity and body chemistry. Investigations into energy healing demonstrate effects that cannot be explained by placebo alone. We are on the threshold of a new era where science and spirituality are not seen as incompatible opposites, but as complementary approaches to understanding the totality of reality. Ancestral African spiritual traditions have much to contribute to this emerging synthesis, because they never made the rigid separation between spirit and matter that characterizes Western thought. For these traditions, everything is spirit manifested in different forms and densities. Now let's explore something many people ask. How do these African traditions relate to other spiritual traditions of the world? Is there contradiction or an underlying harmony? The truth is that when you deeply study different authentic spiritual traditions, you find more similarities than differences. The names of the deities change, the specific rituals vary, the symbols and myths are different, but the fundamental principles are remarkably consistent. All the great traditions recognize a supreme reality beyond physical manifestation. They all teach that there is a spiritual dimension of existence that interpenetrates the physical world. They all emphasize the importance of living in harmony with cosmic principles. They all have developed practices to transform consciousness and realize latent spiritual potentials within human beings. They all honor ancestors and sages of the past in some way. They all use some form of music, dance, and/or altered states of consciousness to access spiritual dimensions. These similarities suggest that there is a perennial wisdom, a fundamental spiritual truth that different cultures have discovered and expressed through their particular cultural lenses. African traditions are an expression of this perennial wisdom, as valid and profound as any other. Indeed, given the archaeological and genetic evidence that modern humanity originated in Africa, it is possible to argue that African spiritual traditions represent the oldest and most fundamental forms of human spirituality. All other traditions may have evolved from these primordial African roots as humans migrated out of Africa and spread throughout the world. This does not diminish the validity of other traditions, but acknowledges the temporal depth and primacy of African traditions. Some scholars have proposed that central concepts in various world traditions may have African origins. The idea of chakras and kundalini in Hinduism and Buddhism may be related to older African concepts about energy centers in the body. Jewish Kabbalah shows remarkable parallels with African numerical and cosmological systems. Even Christian concepts such as the Trinity may reflect influences from African thought on the tripartite nature of the divine. These are controversial and academically debated issues, but they raise fascinating possibilities about historical connections between traditions that are generally seen as completely separate. Let's talk now about something extremely practical: how you can begin to incorporate principles of African cosmologies into your daily life, even if you don't have access to a temple or traditional teacher. First, begin by honoring your ancestors. You don't need elaborate rituals for this. Create a simple space in your home. It can be just a shelf or corner of a table, where you place photos of deceased ancestors, along with a glass of fresh water that you change regularly. You can light a white candle and simply speak to your ancestors. Tell them about your life, ask for guidance, thank them for their blessings and sacrifices. This may seem strange at first if you weren't raised doing this, but persevere. Over time, you may begin to feel a presence. You may begin to receive insights and guidance in subtle ways. You may notice synchronicities and signs that indicate your ancestors are responding. Second, develop a conscious relationship with nature. African traditions have always recognized that spirits inhabit natural elements: trees, rivers, mountains, the wind, fire. When you spend time in nature, do so with reverence. Before entering a forest, ask permission from the spirits of the place. When you sit near a tree, feel its presence. Give thanks for its shade and beauty. If you gather plants for food or medicine, make offerings in return. This is not superstition. It is recognition that you are in a relationship with living beings who deserve respect. Third, pay attention to your dreams. In African traditions, dreams are seen as a primary means through which the spiritual world communicates with us. Ancestors and deities often appear in dreams to give guidance, warnings, or teachings. Keep a dream journal by your bed and write down your dreams as soon as you wake up. Over time, you will begin to notice patterns, recurring symbols, messages. Learn to interpret the symbolic language of your dreams. Fourth, work with your body as a spiritual instrument. Dance, drumming, and singing are not just entertainment in African traditions. They are spiritual technologies for entering altered states of consciousness and invoking divine forces. You don't need to be a trained dancer to use body movement as a spiritual practice. Put on some African drum music and allow your body to move as it pleases, without judgment, without trying to look pretty, just letting the energy flow through you. You might be surprised at what happens when you do this regularly. Fifth, cultivate virtues recognized by African traditions as essential for spiritual development. Respect for elders, generosity, honesty, courage, self-discipline, wisdom. These are not just nice ideas, they are qualities you need to incorporate through daily practice if you want to progress spiritually. Each day presents opportunities to practice these virtues or fail to practice them. Pay attention. Be intentional. When you fail, acknowledge it, learn from it, and try again. Comment transformation. If you are noticing how these practices can truly change the way you live, not just the way you think. Write transformation in the comments, because when you publicly declare your intention to transform, you commit more deeply. And if you know someone who is on a spiritual journey, who is seeking authentic practices that truly work, share this video with that person now. You can literally change the trajectory of someone's life by sharing this information. So don't keep this to yourself. Be generous with this knowledge. Allow it to flow through you to others who need it. Comment transformation now, and let's continue. There is an aspect of African spiritual traditions that is often misunderstood, but is absolutely central: the relationship with suffering and challenge. The modern West has an approach of avoiding suffering at all costs, of seeking constant comfort and pleasure, of seeing any difficulty as something negative that must be quickly eliminated. African traditions have a very different view. Suffering and challenge are seen as a necessary part of the spiritual journey, as opportunities for growth, as tests that strengthen character and soul. In traditional initiations, candidates are deliberately subjected to physical and psychological trials. This is not sadism. It is recognition that you cannot achieve true transformation without passing through the fire. You have to die to your old self to be born as a new being. This death is not metaphorical. It is a real psychological experience of ego dissolution, of confronting your deepest shadows, of total surrender to the transformative process. When you avoid suffering, when you run from challenges, you remain trapped in limited patterns of existence. It is only through confronting and passing through difficulties that you expand your capacity, develop true strength, and realize your latent potential. This does not mean seeking unnecessary suffering or romanticizing pain. It means recognizing that when suffering comes, and it will come because it is an inevitable part of human existence, you can choose to see it as a random curse or as an opportunity for spiritual growth. African traditions offer tools for working with suffering in constructive ways: cleansing rituals to release trauma, offerings to appease hostile spiritual forces, empowering practices to develop resilience, and ancestral guidance to understand the deeper meaning of challenges. We now arrive at the heart of the mystery: the nature of consciousness and its relationship to the Creator Titan. In African cosmologies, consciousness is not seen as an epiphenomenon of brain activity, not an evolutionary accident, but as the very substance of reality. The universe is not dead matter with consciousness miraculously arising on some planets. The universe is consciousness organizing itself into increasingly complex forms. You are not a body that somehow generates consciousness. You are consciousness manifesting a body to have certain experiences. This complete inversion of the materialistic perspective has profound implications. If you are fundamentally consciousness, then you are not limited by the body. You do not cease to exist when the body dies. Physical death is merely a transition, a change of state, but the essential consciousness that you are continues. This is not just comforting belief. This is direct experience reported by countless practitioners of African spiritual traditions and others working with expanded states of consciousness. Near-death experiences, astral projection, communication with deceased ancestors, memories of past lives. All of these are recognized as real in African traditions, not as hallucinations or fantasies. And contemporary scientific research is providing evidence that these experiences may be genuine. Studies on near-death experiences show that people report verifiable perceptions of events that occurred while they were clinically dead, with no measurable brain activity. Research on mediumship shows that mediums sometimes obtain information about deceased people they could not have known through normal means. Investigations into children who claim to remember past lives reveal surprisingly specific details that are confirmed when investigated. These lines of evidence are not conclusive, but they are suggestive enough that we should keep an open mind about the possibility that consciousness truly transcends the physical brain, as spiritual traditions have always taught. If this is true, then the implication is extraordinary. You are literally immortal at the most fundamental level. Your current body is merely a temporary vehicle, a garment you are wearing in this particular life. But the true you, the essential consciousness, is eternal. This eternal consciousness that you are is not separate from the Creator Titan. It is an individualized expression of it. It is as if the cosmic ocean of divine consciousness manifests itself in billions of individual waves, each wave being unique but still being water from the same ocean. Let's now integrate everything we've explored into a unified understanding that you can take with you. The African Titan who gave rise to the earth, the sun, and life is not a historical figure who did something in the distant past. It is the eternal creative principle that is sustaining all of reality at this very moment. When you breathe, it is this principle breathing through you. When you love, it is this principle loving through you. When you create anything, art, music, a business, a relationship, you are channeling the same creative force that brought the cosmos into existence. You are not separate from this force. You are a manifestation of it. And when you awaken to this truth, when you truly absorb it not just intellectually, but at the deepest level of your being, everything changes. You can no longer live a small, mediocre, unconscious life. You are called to live according to your true divine nature. This doesn't mean you become perfect. It doesn't mean you never make mistakes or face challenges again. This means you understand that you are on a journey of constant awakening and evolution, that each experience is an opportunity to learn and grow, that your life has profound purpose and meaning, even when you can't clearly see what that purpose is. Ancient African spiritual traditions offer a map for this journey, practices tested for thousands of years and countless generations of practitioners. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can learn from those who came before. You can connect with living lineages of spiritual transmission that go back to the dawn of human consciousness. But you also need to do the work. No one can do it for you. You can have the best teachers, the most powerful practices, the most profound teachings, but none of that matters if you don't apply it, if you don't practice it, if you don't incorporate these teachings into your daily life. Real spiritual transformation requires discipline, dedication, and courage. You will have to confront parts of yourself that you would rather ignore. You will have to change comfortable but destructive habits. You will have to question beliefs that have structured your entire worldview. This is not easy, but it is absolutely necessary if you want to realize your full potential as a human being. And the reward is completely worth the effort. A life of profound meaning, of authentic connection with the divine and with other beings, of unlimited creativity, of inner peace independent of external circumstances, of love that transcends the narrow limits of the ego. This is what African spiritual traditions promise to those who truly commit to the path. And this is not an empty promise. It is a reality lived by millions of practitioners over thousands of years. So here we are, reaching the end of this extraordinary journey through the depths of ancient African cosmological wisdom. You have learned about the Creator Titan who gave rise to the earth, the sun, and life itself. You have discovered that this is not just a distant myth, but a living truth that has direct implications for your life today. You have explored how African spiritual traditions offer a complete path of transformation that integrates the spiritual and the material, the individual and the collective, the human and the divine. You have seen how this knowledge was systematically suppressed but survived and is resurfacing now precisely when humanity needs it most. Now the question is, what will you do with this information? Will you just passively consume another interesting video and move on? Or will you allow it to truly transform how you live? The choice is yours, but know that you did not come to this video by accident. If you are here now, listening to these words, it is because some part of you, perhaps your soul, perhaps your ancestors, is calling you to awaken, to reconnect with ancestral truths, to take your place as a conscious co-creator of reality. Do not ignore this call. This is the time to act. First, if you've made it this far in this video, if you've watched it all the way to the end, then you are exactly the kind of person this channel serves. You are a serious seeker, not someone who just wants superficial entertainment. So make a statement of that commitment by subscribing to this channel now. Click the subscribe button, activate the bell, because I'm bringing you regular content that will continue your journey of discovery and transformation. Like this video so the algorithm shows it to more people who are also ready for this information. And leave a comment telling me what impacted you most in this video. Not just a word, but a real thought, a genuine reflection. When you articulate what you've learned, you deepen your understanding. Second, share this video with at least 3 people you know need to hear this message. It could be someone who is in a spiritual crisis, someone who is questioning the superficial materialism of modern society, someone of African heritage who is seeking reconnection with their ancestral roots. Be a channel for transmitting this vital wisdom. Third, and most importantly, start practicing. Create an ancestral space in your home. Begin to honor your ancestors regularly. Study more about African spiritual traditions. Seek out communities of practitioners. Incorporate the principles you've learned here into your daily decisions. Don't let this be just theoretical knowledge. Make it a living practice. There are other videos on this channel that will delve deeper into different aspects of what we explored today. The next video appearing on your screen now will take you even deeper into this journey. Click on it. Keep learning. Keep growing. Remember, you are a manifestation of the Creator Titan. You have within you the same power that brought the universe into existence. Don't live below that divine potential. Awaken, transform, and create the extraordinary life that is your birthright. Deep gratitude for having come this far. May the ancestors bless your journey. May you live in alignment with cosmic forces. May you fully realize your divine purpose. See you in the next video.